And here we go. We are live. And I just thought this time, before we will dive in with our guest on today's LinkedIn Live, I'm gonna wait just a few seconds, few minutes, and I hope that people can see me. It should be live on LinkedIn. It should be live on YouTube as well. So waiting before we will dive in, before I will introduce today's young entrepreneur, Fabian Tausch, who will share with us here lots of insights about entrepreneurial mindset, entrepreneurship in itself, of course, and how it will all work out within this new normal. So what we can do to get started with and business and whatever we want to do, especially interesting for those of you who are impacted due to Corona, who might want to look into any new opportunities, or for everybody who's thinking about a side hustle and check out anything what they can do on their own without being basically depending on any kind of employer. And you might be surprised, this young entrepreneur is 23 age old, and I think he has never ever been at a university except for a few weeks, and decided to go for this adventure called entrepreneurship. And I'm super excited to hear insights from him. So let me see if I can do this now here with the whole digital stuff. Yes. And now I'm taking you here towards me, Fabian. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining my second LinkedIn Live ever. So once again, thank you so much for bearing with us and bearing with me for all the technical stuff. Fabian, would you mind to share a few words about you with the audience, who you are, where you are from, and what you do at the moment? And I can't wait to dive with you into the very interesting topic, entrepreneurship.
Hi, Sylvia. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm pretty thankful and grateful for this opportunity. As you mentioned, I'm 23 years old. I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 19 years old. I decided to try something different and talk to my parents about the university stuff. And I was like, look, just going to university for something that I don't really like, then to work later on in a job that I don't like, just to earn money and pursue maybe more cash than somewhere else or something. And I was like, that's not what I want to do. I want to try out myself a bit. Others go for work and travel. Others do, let's say internships and different stuff. And I was like, hey, can you give me 3 years of just trying out? And I understand if the first year doesn't show results, I can definitely go back to university and do my things on the side. Fast forward the 3 years later, or were in October 19, and it worked out quite well. I never signed into university to actively go there again. I'm now an entrepreneur at Code University somehow. So I work with the university together. I'm running projects with the university, but I'm not studying. And this worked out quite well. What I'm doing with Code University is YEP. It's a network for young entrepreneurs where we connect them with thought leaders, mentors, successful entrepreneurs, other young entrepreneurs, and build a close community. And before that, the project that worked out so well was a podcast I started in October 16. I started interviewing successful entrepreneurs and wanted to make their knowledge accessible. It's called Jungunternehmer podcast. It's a German one. Sometimes there are English episodes, for example, with the CEO of Logitech, the co-founder of Slack, and some others. So some cool names are in there. But that's basically what I do. Today is podcast and the network for young entrepreneurs. And that's basically it.
Thank you so much for sharing. And when it comes to, you shared it, like the reason behind, I think every second person, according to some survey, believes that they can change the world through their own entrepreneurial journey. So would you mind to share your why behind and what is your motivation except, and I want to quote this here from your page, grow beyond mental limits. And this resonated with me quite a lot as well. Would you mind to unpack this and share it with us when it comes to basically open your mind and invite diversity into our life?
I think I didn't start with the real why. The only why was, hey, I want to figure out what I want to do. And then I started interviewing successful entrepreneurs because I was interested in entrepreneurship, but I couldn't find relevant information. I didn't have the access in German. My English was pretty bad back then. I couldn't really learn from the people who were already in a situation that I want to be in at some point. Over the time, I figured out that I don't need to be the next tech entrepreneur, even when the media hypes these people quite well, but that's not my main goal. I figured out that I am in a situation where I can interview people, and you see the couch in the background. That's my new podcast studio couch. And people stop by, very successful entrepreneurs, and I sit down with them for, let's say, an hour, and I can ask them questions about everything. And what I do with that is inspiring people. I always want to say young people because the podcast is officially targeted to young people, but I know that a lot of that everybody listens to it from every age range, and that's totally fine. So what I want to do is inspiring people by telling stories of people who made things different. And that means people who changed the world through their work, people who took a different path and succeeded. And I want to inspire people, and that's what I mean with growing beyond mental limits, because we always tend to think that our mental limit is at point X, just because we don't know stories or paths or ideas that brought us or other people beyond this point. And I want to help people open up their minds and their creativity to think about how can I do something as well, and then pursue their dreams or their visions to grow beyond this point. And that's basically what I want to do and what I'm doing. And therefore, I'm interviewing people and connecting people to make this possible.
And what would you say was the number one learning out of all those interviews you have done with people, with successful entrepreneurs, thought leaders? What do you think was the number one thing what you would like to share, especially with someone right now who is thinking about starting an entrepreneurial journey or is a young entrepreneur and might have lots of hesitations or even fear within?
I think what's important to say is that I'm one kind of character. There are different kinds of characters and entrepreneurial characters. So there are the people who are completely structured, sitting behind their desks and working on strategic things or on solving problems. There are people more outgoing, always talking with other people, who are loving conversations, but maybe not that good in structured things afterwards. I'm more this kind of personality. And for me, it works quite well to build a network. So the number one learning for me was not all of the interviews and then one thing that somebody said, but it was that these people are reachable. I can connect with them. I can talk to them. I can get their feedback. I can rely on them. If I call them up, they will help me out. And that adds a lot of diversity to my network or to my knowledge. And I have a completely different ability to solve problems because of the network. And that's why I am pretty obsessed with building a network and connecting people, because I know how powerful it can be. But of course, not everybody is that outgoing. Not everybody wants to talk to people the whole day. So it's always about figuring out who you are, what works for you. And for me, it's definitely that a network can't be harmful, I would say. So it helps you a lot. And therefore, it makes sense to find or to connect with people that are like-minded, that sometimes are ahead of you, sometimes are on the same journey, and to exchange with them on a regular basis. And I think this is true for everybody, but the personalities you want to connect with might be different.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there is also a saying, I believe it says, your network is your net worth. So this is basically something what one of the biggest entrepreneurs said, I think from US. Would you share this, or would you mind say it's a completely different story?
So I saw that a lot of people were assuming that just because I'm hanging out with successful people, I'm way more successful than I am. So success still takes time. So no matter who I might know and how successful and rich these people might be, for me, it's still a different path. It takes time. But I would definitely say um, being rich in this case doesn't always mean cash. It always also means opportunities. So I definitely have a lot of opportunities. I definitely have a lot of ideas and rich in the manner of discussions and conversations. And it's more about what do I do with it. Um, to be fair, I think my worst case is my entrepreneurial stuff doesn't work out, and I have to go through my phone book and call every entrepreneur I know if he or she has a job or a freelance gig or anything for me. And I'm pretty convinced that it might work out, and I won't need, or I'm not long on the job market. That's something that makes me rich when it comes to self-esteem and being pretty straightforward with what I want to do, because I know that there are opportunities and there is a safety net for me. And I think it always, or it doesn't always have to be the net worth. This will come over time, but I think it starts pretty or way earlier with options that help to feel a bit more relaxed, I would say.
Very interesting. You've just mentioned the safety net, and this is something what just by nature is what we all crave, no matter if we are entrepreneurs or whatever we are. Oh yeah, I just lost my 1 second. So the safety net in itself is something what we need because our brain can then start to relax and it's not all the time within one of the survival strategy modes, meaning fight, flight, or freeze. And how would you say, especially, I wanted to go into that a little bit later, but why not starting now? You've mentioned the safety net. If within this new normal, when we talk about the safety net, many people, even employed, lost their jobs, maybe lost their income as an entrepreneur. How would you say can they start to build kind of like the safety net? I personally believe there is no such a thing like the safety net, but it is great to have this kind of anchor within it and believe that there's always another option, that there's always the way forward, never the way backwards kind of thing if you want to. So how would you say can someone create the safety net, especially right now when they might face situations that require exactly this?
I am pretty sure that all of these people have kind of a safety net and maybe just don't see it in the moment. What I said is that I will call up everybody in my phone book and ask for an opportunity. And to be honest, it depends, of course, on who you know, but definitely also the reputation in your network. And everybody has a network. It can be colleagues, of course. If you got fired from a company, it might be hard to get into the same again. Former colleagues who switched places and are happy in a new business. For me, it's back again to the network. So talking to people and saying, "Hey, I'm available right now. I didn't get fired because I'm bad. I just because of an economical situation." Definitely changes the perspective. If you understand that you're not um, without a job because of your skills, but way more because of the economical situation, there is something you can do about it, because you can go to businesses and maybe you know people there, maybe you don't, and you can go there with self-esteem and you can say, "Hey, I want to work for you. I did this and that. Here's a letter of recommendation. You can ask this and that person how I work." And interestingly enough, there are enough businesses that are raising capital, for example, of course, that are startups, and not everybody wants to work in startups, but some of them are pretty grown up. and are more scale up. So that's definitely an option. If somebody raises 50 million or 100 million or 500 million, then you definitely can be sure that they will hire people. So the question is, are you on the spot figuring out the news that somebody is raising money and then hiring people? And are you somebody who is going towards them and saying, hey, I'm here. You might need me for your expansion. And I think that's very important, to change the mindset and to think about, okay, where are opportunities? Of course, I don't want to say anything about how hard it can be without a job and everything else. I can't imagine, because I don't have the situation right now. But I will always advise or ask people to think about opportunities instead of problems, because if you think about things that you can solve and you can take control over, you are responsible for the outcome somehow. Because of course, if you just ask two businesses, it's not that likely that one of them will take you. But if you ask 50 businesses that are somehow in the areas you want to work in or looking for people like you, there is a whole lot more relevancy to it, because you add up opportunities, and that can make the difference.
Thank you so much for sharing. And this is an absolutely great point. And I believe almost like also the transition into the entrepreneurial mindset, because whenever you face a challenge, you start to change the mindset and start to look into opportunities. You start to check out what can you do. And it's exactly what you've just mentioned. It's about to see where you can find another new opportunity, another new gig, whatever you want to do. But on the other hand, you have, of course, LinkedIn, the platform where we are right now on. Check out all recruiters, for example, plug in that you are open for business. Make sure that everything is up to date, that people also can find you and reach out to you. And I just was talking recently with someone, because you've just mentioned, okay, I'm not fired because of being bad in a job. Sometimes, like for example, Steve Jobs, he got fired at Apple, right? Sometimes maybe you even want to look into what is happening. Maybe the next project or maybe the next opportunity, the next job might be exactly the greatest thing for you, that is meant for you to be. So, and when you are now, and this is basically the entrepreneurial mindset, to look into opportunities. And I think you are doing it in such a great way, to be honest, especially at such a young age, to look always at the bright side of the things. And I truly believe, especially, and this is basically the difference between having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So meaning to look at things from the optimism and really to see and check out what can you do, because you have always any kind of next step, even if it's the turtle step, but you can always do something, even if it's the smallest thing, rather to stick and feel stuck and stay within a situation, right? And when it comes to entrepreneurship, and when you have lots of things to do, lots of challenges that you face, what would you say? And I want to go into that and to really to activate your entrepreneurial mindset. What was working for you were you always that way, or was it that something just, the learnings from all the entrepreneurs that kind of allowed you to get into this mindset? Because I just watched recently something from the founder of Starbucks, and he had 297 rejections. And you've just mentioned to reach out to 50 companies. So what would you say, how do you deal with rejections, especially when you reach out to all those people? How would you say was your any kind of activities or any kind of techniques that someone can apply to kind of enhance and unleash this entrepreneurial mindset within?
Okay, I think first of all, for me, it was a lot of inspiration that I watched interviews on YouTube, that I talked to these people and then understood how they work and how they think. But it wasn't like a blueprint of, hey, do this 3 steps and then you have an entrepreneurial mindset. I think it developed just because I only followed such content. So I don't listen to any news anymore. There's no negative news. Other people tell me what's happening in the world. Of course, nobody or not everyone wants to live like this, but for me, I don't have any idea what's happening out there. I banned everything that's negative from my iPhone, for example, and I don't visit news sites. I don't read it because I do care, but I do care to an extent where I can change things. And if, to be fair, something happens around on the other side of the world, it's pretty hard to help out in the moment. I think that building my own businesses and then try to figure out how to help with what I have is a way better focus of my energy and time. So that's the first thing. I banned negative stuff. I only listened to inspiring stuff. That means audiobooks. It means from the various fields. It can be biographies. It can be playbooks for different topics and strategy fields. It can be, for example, the lean startup. It doesn't have to be that you want to be an entrepreneur and run your own startup right now. It also can be very important as an employee to start developing your personality and grow on a personal level, because that makes you more valuable for every employer, or it makes you more prepared for the step into your own self-employment. So that's one thing. And then, of course, watching all the stuff, inspirational stuff on YouTube and interviewing people, and that helped. But I think I always try to find an comparably easy way for complex problems that started in school already. So but back then I never thought about entrepreneurship. So I started thinking about entrepreneurship when I was like 18 and a half, 19 years old. I didn't do so in the school, but I tried to figure out how to survive school with the least amount of effort. So I'm a pretty lazy person, figuring out how to do things, let's say, smart, but this sometimes is a problem, but most of the times it helps me. And that's something I did from day one. And I think that's something how I stumbled into this entrepreneurial mindset. But what helps a lot is listening to interviews with people, more over biographies, because they are really looking for every aspect of an entrepreneur, like Steve Jobs. Like it can also be Arnold Schwarzenegger, who did succeed in 3 different fields, from bodybuilding to acting and politics. And he definitely has a mindset of growth and can teach you some things if you listen to the biography. And I prefer listening because reading takes a long time, but listening, if you're listening in your native language, you can speed up the book readers a bit. And that helps. And that's something, by doing this from day to day, helped me to go deeper into this mindset. I'm not sure if there's a blueprint on how to do so, just because I never thought about a blueprint of it, but maybe you have some ideas about it.
Well, I think in a nutshell, there is a different way of doing things for different people. I am a huge believer that no blueprint or no any kind of structure that is working for you or for me is going to work for everybody. Why? Because we have different backgrounds, we have different expertises, and of course we have different strengths and weaknesses. So therefore it has to be something what I think is kind of like a high level things what you could pay attention to, what you should maybe consider, especially like you've mentioned before, into the optimism, right? Looking into what are your opportunities rather to look into what are your obstacles. And the other thing is, like you've mentioned, to stop consuming negative news or negativity in itself, especially when you have to solve lots of problems by yourself. And I watched one of your interviews, and you've mentioned it, like how can I stay up to date? How can I then start to, look into what Siemens is doing when I am not up to date with news, when I don't know what is happening around the world. And this brings me a little bit to the next topic. How would you say can a startup or because you're not doing everything by yourself, right? You have, first of all, your partnership with the Code University within your Young Entrepreneurs program that you are running for the young entrepreneurs in Europe. But who else is on your team, and how do you make sure that you're all engaged within all those tasks that you're doing?
I have one
Especially
more
when you're
point.
lazy.
I have one more point before. I changed my environment a lot. I'm regarding the entrepreneurial mindset. I live together with entrepreneurial minded people. I talk the whole day with entrepreneurial minded people. And this sounds harsh, but I don't really have contacts from school or the few weeks in university anymore, or at least so little or not that often that it doesn't influence my day to day. That means I'm really pretty much only talking with entrepreneurial minded people, which also brings me into the mindset as well. So figuring out who is problem solving or solution orientated helps a lot to figure out how to think different. Because if you talk to somebody and you're complaining and this person says, hey, you don't have to complain, these are possible options, or do you know any more? And these people bring you to think or force you to think like an entrepreneur or entrepreneurial minded. This helps a lot. This makes a huge difference. Just in addition to the question before.
Yes, absolutely great point, because you are the average. There is a book called You Are the Average of the 5 People that you surround yourself with the most time. So this means whatever you consume, most of it will impact you if you want or don't want, because of course this is going into your unconscious mind, and this is basically creating your subconsciousness, and we are acting roundabout between 90 and 95% on our subconscious mind. Thank you so much. Yes, that's a great point as well. Absolutely. And this is why we are both in Berlin, right?
That's true. That's true.
What on one of the hotspots?
I now can come back to the question you asked. So first of all, on YEP, I don't call it Young Entrepreneurs Program anymore because program was misleading. It's not a program, it's a network. That's why I would say platform instead of program. But that's something I haven't publicly announced that I call it that way yet. But of course, there I have Thomas Bachem. He's the founder of Code University, or one of the 3 founders, and he is working with me closely strategic-wise. Then I have some help from Code about different topics. So I don't have an actual team there. I'm running most of it myself. I have an intern right now, but I'm running most of it myself. But of course, we have an engaged community. They are helping me with a lot of things. That's pretty cool, and I'm pretty thankful for that. Regarding my podcast, you're right. I'm not doing anything or everything alone anymore. I tried it over the years, and it took a very long time until I found a way to integrate freelancers in a way that I wanted. As the podcast was earning money and I had, let's say, money to bet on, I knew money is coming in. I started to work with friends of mine that I integrated as freelancers into my team. Right now, there's an audio specialist. He's working on figuring out the best sound quality. Sometimes if I record via Zoom, I try not to do it anymore, but during Corona, it was not possible without. I didn't have the best quality because Zoom is Zoom. Just let it that way. And then I have a content manager, I would call him, or head of content, or however you want to name it. He's focusing on cutting smaller pieces out of the interviews and trying to bring that into a shape that I can publish them on different platforms, and mostly LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. So I'm not. I record an interview, but I'm not involved in the process of figuring out what's relevant for which platform, because this takes so much time. And to be honest, the podcast is more a side hustle right now. Of course, it's a project that has a lot of value for me and in personal brand and new connections and cool people and reach. But YEP is by far more the focus project, even when in the last weeks it took some time to finish the studio, to invite the first people, and to figure out how everything works. So it's something that consumes my time quite well from both sides. But as mentioned, and you asked about it, I'm a lazy person, but that doesn't mean that I'm not working at all. It sometimes also means that I'm, instead of others watching Netflix or TV, I'm just sitting at home and watching interviews, how people interview, or how who is interesting, or sometimes reading startup news, sometimes doing different stuff just to educate myself, and sometimes it's really just watching Netflix. So this happens as well. Don't want to say it's not, but I am lazy, but I would still say I work a lot. But I'm not good in structured, organized work behind my computer. I'm pretty good in conversational stuff, in let's say networking, connecting people. But I always, and that's something I figured out, I need help and a second person to work with when it comes to the organizational tasks and all the, I call it back office, or every process that's needs to be run. So that's how I build the team, or what I'm looking for when I extend my team, and that's how it works for me. And I would say it works quite well. It always has room for improvement, but I'm pretty happy with it.
Thank you so much for sharing. And what would you say at the end to wrap up our today's interview here on LinkedIn Live? Someone just shared with us, yes, the company of people you keep determines the altitude you will fly. Definitely. I think this is something what we should always keep in mind, depending on who you surround yourself with. And at the end, Fabian, I would love to hear from you on the WinX Today show, and of course also on the whole approach, what I believe is something, and what I get reminded of on a regular basis, especially when I forget it sometimes. What would you say was your biggest win so far within your entrepreneurial journey?
I think defining the biggest wins, or I'm very bad in reflecting what worked out. That's something I'm always looking forward. I'm very bad in looking backward. I think the biggest win was starting it all. So starting the podcast, going out there and not thinking too much about what other people say and what others might do about it. Is there a problem? Is there a problem?
Oh, are you still with us? Yes, you are back. Sorry, you got just interrupted. Can you? So
Okay.
the biggest win was to start it all, right?
Yes, the biggest win was to start it all, and to not think too much about what others might think, what hurdles may come in front of me and on the journey. I think the start was the biggest win, because that enrolled everything.
So the start is most of the time the greatest challenge and the easiest thing, because you don't know what is coming ahead. So you can look from it or from two different perspectives as well, if you wish. Fabian, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being our guest here today. One of the young entrepreneurs. I had a little bit of a more experienced entrepreneur last week here. He was and has been in business for over 20 years. And today we have you here, so I'm looking always to learn also from different aspects. And I think Steve Jobs once said, the lightness of the beginnings takes a lot of out of pressure, especially when you are longer doing something, you have expectations and all the stuff. So I'm really excited to see what you are building here, what you are growing, especially when it comes to impact the ecosystem in such a great way to support young entrepreneurs to create their dreams and go beyond everything what they believe of limits they have and start to create what they want, because we live only once and life is sometimes shorter than we expect. I'm going to share about that soon on LinkedIn because I've just got a message about this. So is there anything what you would like to share at the end with our listeners, for everybody who's now watching, maybe thinking about starting an entrepreneurial journey, or any golden nugget what you think would be just the thing what someone should hear at the beginning?
I would say figure out who you want to listen to. It can be podcasts, it can be people, and you follow them on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or whatever, and try to reach out to these people. They more often are pretty easy reachable. So just try it, figure out how to get in contact with them, talk to them over phone, meet them, invest in the relationship. So if they live in Munich and you live in Berlin, just say, hey, I'm in Munich next week. What about a coffee? And then, of course, you can pay the flight or the train or go there by car and invest some time and some money. But be responsible about these relationships and invest in them. And some small self-promotion. If you're German and you want to listen to podcast interviews with successful entrepreneurs, you can definitely check out my podcast. It's called Jungunternehmer Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, or it's called Apple Podcasts right now. But I would say just go for your dream, vision, and figure out stuff on the way.
Thank you so much for sharing. I will share the link from your podcast in the comments below. Thank you so much. Wishing you a great Wednesday. This was our LinkedIn live lunchtime for everybody who is now in the office, or it's home office, let's say that way, for probably most of us. Enjoy your afternoon, and please don't hesitate to connect, of course, with Fabian. I will link him also in the comments below, and wish you a great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.